Hey everyone, welcome to Mensan Musings Monday of the Petropapers Podcast. As you can see, I love alliteration. I'm trying to start these up again. It's been a while since I've done one. In fact, it's been about 6 months since I've done one. Apologies for me. But I want to make it up to you guys and start with a Mensan Musings Monday based on some of the feedback I've gotten in how to make this really productive. So today, as you saw in the title, I'm going to talk about EOR, or enhanced oil recovery, particularly in unconventionals, and some of the challenges in EOR in unconventionals. I'll talk a little bit about conventionals as well. I also put some notes on here, and I'm going to read off some of those notes in terms of some of the challenges in EOR, what the current industry state is, the types of EOR, and in the description box, I'm going to put a ton of resources for you to check out on your own in terms of getting your start in taking a deep dive and going down that rabbit hole of enhanced oil recovery. So let's get to it. Now let's talk about it. What in the world is unconventional EOR? So unconventional EOR is enhanced oil recovery for unconventional reservoirs or shale and tight reservoirs. So traditional EOR methods were built on conventional reservoirs. Shale and tight formations break those rules. And then unconventional reservoirs, they trap hydrocarbons in nanoscale pores, meaning that the recovery factors are less than 10% without intervention. So in the way that I like to think about it is, instead of the industry thinking about frack harder, EOR is the way to recover smarter. That's just, I'm not going to try to trademark that term or trademark that phrase, but you can keep on mind in that. So some of the core challenges in unconventional reservoirs, they're ultra low permeability with fluid movement, making classical sweep efficiency irrelevant. So sweep efficiency is a common term that is used in water floods, so how well you end up recovering that oil from the ground. So there's complex fracture networks that creates unpredictable flow paths. There are rapid early time decline curves that demand new approaches to sustain production. And fluid rock interactions behave differently at nanoscale confinement. However, unconventional EOR is gaining traction. So you have gas-based EOR like huff and puff with natural gas CO2 or rich gas to repressurize the reservoir. Then you have gas molecules that can enter nanopores more easily than liquids. And CO2 shows promise due to the miscibility and adsorption effects. Then you have surfactant and chemical EOR. So this type of EOR is very common in the Permian Basin too, and it's been going on for quite some time. So there are nanosurfactants designed to alter wettability in tight rock. Polymers and viscoelectric surfactants improve fracture conductivity, and chemical slugs tailored to survive high salinity and temperature. So that's your surfactant and chemical EOR. Then you think about thermal and electrothermal concepts that's used for heavy oils, but this is localized heating to reduce viscosity in tight oil plays. So I would see thermal EOR more likely to happen in the Bakken, like in cooler reservoirs. And then emerging electrothermal stimulation to mobilize trapped hydrocarbons. Then you have microbial EOR, so MEOR, which is engineered microbes that generate gases or surfactants in situ, and still experimental but gaining interest for a low-cost uplift. So then what makes unconventional EOR unconventional? So it's less about sweeping the reservoir, and it's more about re-stimulating the fracture network, or stimulating the fracture network. And when you think about the success, the question people tend to ask is, well, how do you measure success of an EOR project? So it's dependent on pore scale physics, and it's not just reservoir scale engineering. And it requires integration of geomechanics, chemistry, and data science. I think the cool thing that's happening with EOR these days is that there's going to be an integration with the digital world with EOR. So machine learning models predicting optimal huff and puff cycles and injection volumes, fiber optic sensing and microseismic to map fracture behavior in real time, SCADA and monitoring, ensuring safe injection pressures and cycle timing, and digital twin stimulating EOR scenarios before field trials. So when you think of the economics and ESG dimensions of EOR, it can extend the life of existing wells, reducing the need for new drilling. CO2-based EOR aligns with carbon management strategies, and incremental recovery improves asset value without expanding surface footprint. So those are the economic and ESG dimensions of it. There is reduction in emissions potential, carbon management potential, and then also debating the technical versus economic success when it comes to EOR. I think with chemical EOR, you have a higher chance of that economic success compared to the gas EOR. Of the huff and puff, I mean. Huff and puff is also possible, and I think a lot of people are perfecting the huff and puff method. When I say people, a lot of operators are perfecting the huff and puff method. But there are going to be less repetitive methods of huff and puff, and there's going to be more data-driven methods. That's why I said there's machine learning in there. So what is the industry still figuring out? How to scale pilot successes across heterogeneous shale plays? How do we not make something a pilot anymore and make it a playbook? Balance the injection costs with uncertainty and uplift, and then how to design EOR programs that adapt to changing fracture connectivity over time. So when I think of primary infill wells or parent-child wells, how do we do a case-by-case analysis of those EOR programs? I would like to end a Mensan Musings Monday with a closing thought. That unconventional EOR is not just a technical challenge, it's a philosophical one. It really does ask the question, how do we coax hydrocarbons from rock that was never meant to flow, when you think about the conventional terms of EOR versus the unconventional terms? So then the answer is going to lie at the intersection of physics, chemistry, and creativity and curiosity, which is the perfect playground of a Mensan, such as myself, mind. Well, I hope you enjoyed this version of Mensan Musings Monday. As usual, please be sure to subscribe to the Petropapers Podcast, and feel free to leave me any feedback that you have relating to this. I am going to put a lot of resources in the description box for the podcast monologue, and I hope you have a good rest of your week.